Good morning. Well, I've got two jobs that I'm starting today, both of which seem relatively simple, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to find some major problems as I get on with it. So, recently we've had this pole here in the car park replaced by BT, and as you can see, our light is currently on a traffic cone. Our light used to be on the pole. I could put it back up on the pole, but we're not really supposed to have it up there. BT weren't too happy about us having it up there, and I'm pretty sure if we put it back up, they'll probably come out and tell us to take it back down again. So, I have got to relocate that light. So that ties in with the other job that I got to do, which is this gate post here is going rotten. So I'm going to have to dig out this post and replace it. So my thought is, if I dig out this post here and put a tall pole in here, I can put the light on this post here. There's a junction box just down there, which is tied into the light circuit for over there. So I can move the light to here. So all sounds relatively simple. I know there's going to be major problems. Now the first problem is going to be this post, because although it wobbles like this, as you can see, that is screwed to these. These are what goes into the floor. This is what's rotting. That goes into a block of concrete. So I don't know how big this block of concrete is going to be, but I'm soon going to find out. So I haven't got anything fantastic. I haven't got a digger. I've got a spade and a lot of determination. So yeah, let's start digging. Well, it's a good job I've got plenty of determination, because as I thought, this is getting bigger by the minute. So I dug down here thinking, yep, that's the edge of the concrete, that makes sense. And I've gone down and I've hit concrete. So the hole's going to get bigger. Right. Right, well, it's working. Progress is slow, but it's working. But yeah, my options are either super tough concrete that I can't dig through, or something that feels like concrete but it's a little bit softer. So yeah, I'm thinking I need to get a little bit more mechanical, so I brought my drill in. Let's give this a go. Right, well, it's taken me 2 hours, but I've got a hole that's just about deep enough now. So once I got through the couple of layers of concrete, I got down to the soil level and I thought, yep, this should be so much easier now. I'm in the soil, And it wasn't. It was rock solid as well. So I've dug through the soil, found quite a few large stones as well, so that slowed me down. But like I say, I've got a hole that's deep enough. Problem is, it's not big enough. So if I go straight down here, I need to make the hole bigger. So I could bring out the edge here and the edge here. That'd be nice, relatively easy digging. Problem is, I can't do that because I've worked off of the angle of the post here to line my hole up. And I shouldn't. I should have angled it off the gate here. So that goes there, which means my hole needs to go there. Which means I've got to dig a lot more out. So yeah, back to digging. Right, so that's a nice big hole to the right depth now. I think it's in the right place, but that's where the pole's going. If it's wrong, then we'll sort it out afterwards. But that's ready for the pole now. So talking of poles, I've got a pole. So this is the old BT pole from there. When they took it out, I asked if I could keep the old one, and they said okay. Now, I know it seems strange. They've taken it down. Obviously, there's something wrong with it. I can't see anything wrong with it. Thing is, they don't monitor their equipment. They need to make sure that that's going to last a good 10 to 15 years without anyone touching it. So they will literally go, oh, that pole's getting old, we'll replace it. So looking at it, I can't see any damage to it, I can't see any rot to it. There's a couple of cracks run up the length of it, which might be why they've said we don't want to use it anymore, but I don't think that's affecting it at all. So you can see that mark there is where the light used to be. So I've cut it off from above there, so there's a good 5 foot of the pole that I've cut off. So that makes it a little bit lighter, but it is by no means light. So not only is it dense wood, it's got loads and loads of bitumen in there to preserve it for all the years, so it's heavy. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get this in here. I'm going to try, first of all, with just lifting it. I very much doubt that's going to work, but we've got to try. Right, so I'm not surprised it didn't work. I am surprised at how far I did get it, but yeah, I'm just too short to lift that. I'm going to have to find something to prop it up with, so let's see what we can find. Okay, attempt 2. I'm not any more hopeful, but we'll give it a try. Right, so that was working, but the problem was those initial wooden supports that I put on were getting in the way. So I'm going to try it again. This time I'm going to, once it's on the ladder, remove those wooden supports and then give it another try. Now if you're concerned that this is just going to all fall down on me, it can't fall on me because of the ladder there. It either falls to one side or the other. So I am safe, despite what it looks like. Right, well that is the pole in place. Now I know that looked dodgy what I was doing. It was. Obviously BT have some way of doing this because they don't always get their vans all the way to where the poles go. I think they have some sort of tripod setup that they can use to put these in. Obviously I'm limited with what I have available, so I'm pretty impressed at how well I did there. So now the pole is upright, all the pressure is going straight down. There's very little sideways pressure. So all I need to do now is make sure that is completely vertical and backfill that hole to hold it in place. Now I'm going to be using the gravel that I dug out because it just needs to be tight and compact. When BT put these poles in, they only put back the soil that was around them anyway, so it doesn't need to be concrete down there. So as long as I make sure it's compacted, do it in layers and compact it as I go, this should be absolutely fine. So I told you it sounded easier than I thought. Just pop the pole in, it'll be fine. Right, let's get on to backfilling. Well, that's the post in. All the soil's compacted around the bottom of it, so that's nice and stable, and I've cleared the extra soil away from here as well, so it's all nice and tidy. So we're on to the next task, which is rehanging this gate. So unfortunately, I said about setting this post back a little bit. I got a little enthusiastic there, I think. So when I was putting this pole in, I wasn't really concentrating on the gap size. I was more thinking, is that vertical? So the gap is bigger than I needed. That's not too much of a problem because I can put some blocking in and make the gap smaller, but there's a lot of gap there. So I'm not too worried again because the gate's ropey. It does need to be replaced at some point in the future. When I do that, I'll build a bigger gate that will fit the gap. But for now, I've got to reuse this. So there's a little bit of gap here that can be made bigger because it doesn't have to be quite so tight to the pole. The other thing is I'm changing the hinges, which makes the gap smaller. So at the moment, this hinge bracket bolts through that pole. Obviously I can't do that to this massive great big post here, so I'm going to have to use this that bolts on. So that's going to end up probably about there. So I was initially thinking of using this block of wood to pack it out, but I'm now thinking, seeing the gap, I'm probably going to have to go with something like that. We'll put it up, we'll see how it looks. If I don't like it, then I'll have to think of something else, but we'll try that first of all. Right, well that's the gate on. It doesn't look too bad. There's not actually too big a gap on this side. And the hook lines up nicely. So if we unhook it, we can open that all the way around to here, which we couldn't do before. Obviously it opens all the way the other way once we get rid of this post. So that is my next step, is to get rid of this. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to bother recording that because there's not a lot to it. I'm going to get rid of that post. I'm going to cut the fence here and reattach it. A little bit of fence behind to the new post. And then just cut these flush with the floor. Right, well that's the old post removed, the fence is rebuilt, so it looks like I've never been there, and the gate can open all the way around and hook open back there. Now I do need to trim some of that plant back, but it's been like that all year, so that's absolutely fine. So next thing is to move the light across. Now we're getting late in the day today, so I'm thinking I'll leave this till tomorrow, so see you in a bit. Okay, well it's the next day, so let's start looking at this mess of electrics. So I've got proper underground cable joints on order. They're going to be coming in later today, so at the moment I can't do too much, but we can get everything laid out and made sure it's all in the right place. So let's go through what I've got here. So first of all, we've got this big wire at the back here. That is one that supplies power to the top lake. So I don't know when it went round the front of the pole. It's been like that for years. It's all tangled with their cables, so it should really be nice and neat round the back. So my plan is to cut that in half and then rejoint it at the back of the pole, so that can be buried slightly and then you won't see it. We've then got these two joint boxes here. So this one here, I've got no idea what it does. It's just a loop in and a loop out cable. It was screwed to the front of the pole, but as you can see, people drive into the pole and they've smashed our joint box. So that, I'm literally just going to joint those two cables together and bury them underground. Ignore them. Wherever they go, they go. So this is the other bits that we've got. So we've got this cable here. Now that was connected to the lighting circuit at one point. I believe it runs off over that way, but I haven't found the other end of the cable. Now I disconnected that years ago, and we haven't had any problems with the lights since. And we haven't found any problems over there, so wherever that goes, it isn't important. That can just be cut off and buried. So then that leaves this one here, which is obviously the joint box that was on the bottom of the pole here, goes up to our light here, and then this blue wire was a temporary, just because the wires go in different directions, and that is the other armoured cable that went into that joint box. So that cable there and that cable there need to be jointed together. And then that will get rid of this blue wire, and then this coil here and the light needs to go on that pole. So let's start by getting the light up. Okay, let's try this again. So I got the light up yesterday. You saw me start to put that up, then the camera decided to shut off because the camera card was full. But other than that, I didn't actually do anything that notices. I started tidying up the plants. I got some of the reeds out here. I tidied up the pampas grass there. You know those big 1-ton sacks you get? I filled 2 of those just from this section here, and it doesn't notice. But yeah, cable joints didn't come in till 3 o'clock, so it was too late to start that yesterday. So I dug the holes ready for the cables to go in, but I couldn't actually do anything, so on to jointing cables today. Right, well aren't you lucky? I'm going to show you how to do a proper underground armoured cable joint today. So, I'm using this kit here. That's not necessarily because I recommend it, it's just purely this is what was available locally. They're all pretty much the same thing. It's a resin kit that does a torpedo joint in there. I'll show you how that all works and what's in the box as I go. So these are the 2 cables that I'm jointing together, 2 for the lighting circuit. So I've already cut and prepped this cable. So you can see here, this is what's known as armoured cable. So that is your regular cable there. So your 3 cores covered in coloured plastic, covered in a black plastic there. It's then covered in the armouring, the metal sheathing there, and then another layer of plastic. Now that armouring there is earthed, so that goes to earth, as well as one of these cores here being the earth as well. In some situations they just use the armouring, but not as often anymore. So I've got to cut and prep for the next one. So the first thing to do is make sure you've got decent overlap on your cable. Now everything is going to have to fit inside this torpedo shape here. So I don't want to strip it back any further than that because of them two bits fitting, but I want to cut it about there. Best thing to do is cut it a little longer than you need and then cut it back. Interesting. So that is a 4 core going out of there rather than 3 core. Right, so next step is to cut the armouring. So again, double check the length, double check where I'm going to cut it. So we'll start there. So what I'm trying to do now is I want to cut this armoured part here without cutting the cable inside. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go around with the saw there and just lightly score into it all the way round. I'm not actually cutting through it with the hacksaw, just getting a dent in it. Okay, now using a knife, strip that black coating off there, expose the wires underneath, and if you unravel it, you can now bend it back and forth at that score line. It will just snap off. Now clearly there's been some water in here at some point, which is why I've got this white fluffy stuff, which isn't good. But like I say, I'm not relying on this arm ring as an earth. I'm relying on it as protection. So there we go. So now I can use the knife to just cut back a little bit more of that black coating there. I'm rather out of practice of this. I haven't done it for years. Right, so that's the arm ring done. So now I want to cut the sleeving of there. Now again, I do it with a knife. You've got to be very careful doing this. You don't want to damage the coloured cores inside. So you just want to, a couple of millimetres up from the arm ring there, just lightly score it. And then you should be able to bend it, and it just starts to split open. You can then see where the coloured cores are and continue the split along, making sure not to damage any of the coloured cores. Right, so there we go. So we now have the section that we're going to joint, and that fits all within our casing here, so that's good. Okay, so I've double checked, I've worked out what's going on. So this is always a problem when you're working with old equipment and old systems that different people have worked on in different times. So yes, right, this cable colour is the old cable colours. They changed the cable colours in the UK. I think it was 2004 they changed that. It was about that time. I'm not going to go into the new colours, I'm working with what I've got here. So they used to have red and black as your domestic electric in the UK. Then in the industrial side of things, they had what was known as three-phase, so you had 3 live wires, and that could get them a higher voltage. And that was red, yellow and blue, so all 3 of those were live wire colours. Now because armoured cable was traditionally used in the industrial setting and not in the domestic setting, it always comes with the red, yellow and blue because they assume that you're going to use it for industrial stuff. So that's why we've got red, yellow, blue, 3 lives and a neutral in this one here. But this is where it gets complicated, because what electricians did is if they wanted to use that as a single phase, they would use the red as a live, the blue as a neutral and the yellow as the earth. That's not a problem. I can connect this up red to red, yellow to yellow, blue to blue, and my light wouldn't work because this has been wired by a domestic electrician. So they have still used the yellow as the earth and the red as the live, but they have used the black as the neutral because that was what they were more used to. And the blue here, they have cut off. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. I don't like doing this, connecting 2 different types of wire to each other, or different colours to each other, because it complicates things in the future. But I need this to work now, so that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to connect red to red, yellow to yellow, and blue to black. So that is why people always get confused with this stuff, because it's not always straightforward. Right, next step is to connect the cables together. So in the kit they give you these little screw connectors. So these are uninsulated, they give you a little Allen key to do the screws up on them. So what you need to do is you need to stagger these across on your wires. Again, making sure that it always fits inside this little casing here. You don't want any of it sticking out. So to do that, you're going to have to joint one there, next one there, next one over there. So we'll start with the live, or the red. Right, so that's nice and tight. There's none of the copper showing, and I haven't clamped it onto the plastic, I've clamped it straight onto the copper, and that's what you want. So then we'll just do the other 2. So just lining it up slightly further along to make sure that they don't touch. There we go. Right, so I've taken my gloves off for the next bit because it gets a little fiddly. So that is the cable jointed, so the electricity can flow through there. But if we get a fault further down the line that way, it can short out to this armouring here, and it doesn't go anywhere at the moment. That is connected to earth at the board, so we need to link from there to there. So in the kit they send you this green strip, and if you strip the insulation off, there's this sort of braided wire below, and what we want to do is connect that there. And what they send you is these springs, which are incredibly fiddly. But the idea is you literally just wrap these around like that. And then once you know what your length is, you can cut it relatively easily and strip the other end. There we go. And now before we do anything else, we're going to test this to make sure it works. Right, so now that we're happy it's been tested, it's all working fine. So I do like to go across these terminals one last time before I do this and just check that they are tight enough. But now we're going to encase it in resin. So what you need to do is get the torpedo shaped bit out of the kit. Now this has little ridges going down the end here, and you just need to cut that off onto whatever one is relevant to the size of your cable, because what you want it to do is have a nice snug fit round your cable. And then we put two pieces together like that, and it just clips together, so you want to make sure all of them have properly clipped together. Yep, there we go. And I did clean the cable as well here, but we don't want any mud in there. The next thing to do, they give you tape in the kit as well. I'm going to use this one because it's better quality. And this is literally, you want to tape up the ends of the case here just to make sure that none of the resin leaks out. It also prevents it from sliding up and down the cable while the resin sets. Right, so that is now ready for the resin. So I've made sure it's level because we don't want any air bubbles in there. So they've got these little channels that they can come up to the hole to escape from. So we want that perfectly level. And yeah, so then we've got the resin kit here, which if you open the bag, you have this ingenious invention here, which looks like two bags. It's actually got this black strip here you take off. Now it's one bag. So you want to make sure this is relatively warm. If you're using it below 10 degrees, they say keep it above 15. So this has been inside, so it's all nice and warm. Then you just want to mix the two pieces together. It says for 2 minutes until they're completely mixed. Right, so that's been about 2 minutes, so that's all completely mixed, there's no more of that yellow in there. So this is the stage where you can't leave this, this needs to go in now, and after this, that's it, the joint's done, you can't change it at all, so you want to make sure it's all correct up to this point. So we just cut the corner of the bag there, use it like a piping bag, and squeeze the resin in. Final thing, little cap for the top. Right, so that's that joint done. Now I want to leave that for the resin to set. Unfortunately the kit doesn't actually tell me how long it takes for the resin to set. It says if it's over 6,000 volts you've got to leave it for an hour before you turn the power back on. For the low voltage stuff like this you can just turn it on straight away because that is insulated. But I want to make sure that that's not moved at all while the resin's setting. So yeah, I'm going to give it a couple of hours to make sure that that's properly set, and then we can turn the power on and see if the light works. Right, so while I'm waiting for that to cure, I'm going to joint these two cables together. Now this circuit is dead, I don't know what it does, I don't know where it goes, but we're obviously in the middle here because we've got a joint. So if we ever find that we do need to reinstate this, we find out what it does, I don't want to be the one responsible for causing a break in the circuit. So for the sake of £20 for a kit, I'll just joint this together and then I don't have to worry about it. I doubt we'll ever use whatever's on the end of this, but it's worth doing. So right, so that's those cables jointed and buried. So we're on to the last one here. So I've double checked that it is an electrical cable. I mean, the earth wire running alongside it is usually a giveaway, but it also says electrical cable on there, because water pipes used to be black, and you don't want to mix those two up because you get very wet if you cut the wrong thing. So I'm confident it's electrical cable, so I cut some of the insulation away here and cut through some of the armouring so I can get to the core inside, because I'm testing this with a volt stick. Now, they aren't the most accurate things. That's why I wanted to get down to the inside layer. The outside layer there, if I tested from there, it might say it was dead and it was still live. So I've got down to the inside layer and I've tested it and checked that there was power there. I've then turned the power off and the power's gone away. So I've done that multiple times, on and off. Every time I turn the power on, there's power here. Every time I turn it off, it says it's dead. So I'm quite confident that this has been isolated. So all I need to do now is cut it and hope that there's enough slack here to do a decent joint at the back. Now I'm not going to record it because you've already seen two, and yeah, I just want to get it done. So right, I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished. There we go. I don't know what I was worried about. There's loads of slack there. These larger sizes are a little bit more difficult. You have to be a lot more precise. So this is the largest size that this kit will do, which is a 4-core 6mm cable. Right, well that's that joint done. So all I've got to do now is bury it. Okay, so that's all the soil back, all the cables are buried, everything's nice and neat and tidy again. So with that, I'm finished, which is excellent. So I know those cables aren't buried anywhere near as deep as they should be. If this was a new installation, I'd be wanting to get down 2 to 3 feet. I'd be putting them in conduits so you could pull them out and replace them if you ever needed to. And I'd be putting marker tape in a foot above them so that if you were to ever dig there, you'd find the marker tape before you found the cable. Obviously this isn't a new installation, this is an existing installation that I've repaired, so I've got to work with what I've got. So I've buried them as deep as I can. They're all a good 6 inches below the surface, so they're not going to start poking through. So that means I can strim and cut the grass here without worry of damaging any cables. And obviously if anyone parks in this parking space and reverses into the pole, they're not going to damage joint boxes. So from that point of view, I'm happy that I can strim and not get tangled in wires. BT are happy because obviously we haven't got any mains electrical equipment on their pole, so that's them happy. So the owner is happy because obviously not only have we got a new pole here for our gate, we have got a light back over this area. And the other important thing is we've also got a working light down there. So obviously I tested everything so I knew it would work, but it's nice just to have the visual confirmation that everything is good. So now I know this seems like a lot of faff, 3 days worth of work, lots of digging to move that dim little light bulb from here to there. I don't know why it wasn't there to start with, it would just make sense, but it is amazing when it does get dark how much light that actually gives out. So I am pleased it's finished though. I do not want to do another post like that in a hurry. I'm pleased I've done it. I liked the challenge, don't want to do it again. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do subscribe, there's always something going on here that's always of interest. And I shall see you later.